Great.
Yay, it's happening. So I'm going to let you introduce Erica. I'm going to just do.
Sounds great.
Welcome everybody to Sierra Comments. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to the people watching online. I just want to, before I introduce Nick, I want to just say that there's some cool events coming up. This Tuesday, I'm teaching a class. It's free. It's for a lunch and learn. It's on LinkedIn, but it's not your average LinkedIn class. It's about how to use LinkedIn to get in touch with people that run companies, that own companies, to kind of go to ways to go to the top, build relationships. It's about relationship building. It's not just about resumes and getting hired. So that's this Tuesday, 12 to 1. Next month on April 26th, the next Tech Talk is with Peter Bishop. And the topic is futurism. And he's actually a professor of futurism. And he is also executive director and founder of something called Teach the Future. And so it's really a way of thinking about the future and maybe even planning for it. But it's instead of, we're all like, oh, spreadsheets, and what do I need to do tomorrow, and task lists. It's a little bit more, very much more expansive and future forward. On Wednesday, April 19th, we have a web workshop. Andreas helps out sometimes on that. Welcome. And that's at 7 o'clock in this classroom. You bring your computer. We have web experts. They walk around with us and help you fix your form or do whatever you want to do to build your website. That's the web workshop. And then all this, of course, is on sierracommons.org. I'm going to just tell you one more event at the beginning of May. There's another free session, 12 to 1, taught by Rachel McCullough, and it's about how to use AI in marketing. So trying to make the content juicy.
Juicy content.
Juicy content. The tech talk, the 1, 2, 3 tech talks away from now is psychedelics in the workplace. So that should also be a fun topic. This event is sponsored, supported by Telestream, who's an awesome local video company. It's like a pillar of our community as far as the business community. So thank you for the support. Some of the other events are also supported by the Nevada City Chamber of Commerce, the Sierra Small Business Development Center, the Small Business Administration, and the Office of Small Business in California. So thank you everyone for the support. And tonight, Nick, some of you, I know Nick, but from Burning Man, from being an awesome bartender, awesome magician. He fills the Nevada Theater, burlesque performer, but no, wait, there's more. Apparently this guy tours around, teaching people about security. I've known him for, I don't know, a decade.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this about this guy. So we were talking one night and I'm like, okay, you got to teach a class, and here he is. So Nick.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
This is being recorded, by the way. And Nick has a special introduction too.
Well, we're going to take care of that later.
Okay.
I just kind of want to jump right in and start doing this because I don't know who y'all are. Somebody, but I want to, because it's such a small group, I want to get to know you a little bit more. So we already talked a little bit, but I kind of want to ping on you just to see, like, what's your name?
Oh, I don't know who I am. Who are you?
I'm Nick.
Okay, sorry. Hello, my name's Ethan. Hi.
Ethan?
Yeah.
Cool. And how are you?
Hi, I'm Fiona.
Fiona, nice to meet you as well. And how about you?
Andreas.
Andreas, and what's your name?
Allison.
Allison,
Yeah.
that's very nice name. Allison, did you drive it in the blue car?
Dark gray Prius.
Dark gray Prius.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your email address?
Gotcha.
Tell me your social security number.
Yeah, I can do that.
Some information, and you were already onto it as soon as I started talking, is very well guarded, and some information is you give freely. And if you get enough data points in this information, you can construct something that can crack the shell of what we like to think of as our security, our little protective bubble. So today we're going to talk about the basics of how you can protect yourself and what security is, how to approach it, how to think about risk, how to think about threats, develop your own threat model, and form a security posture for whatever situation and scenario you may be presented with. This is really overarching, giant top-down models, but we're also going to get really specific into very specific scenarios and tools that you can actually use on a day-to-day basis to make yourself more safe, secure, and understand what the risks you're taking actually are. If you can't already tell, back up a little bit. This is a weird talk. So just pop this over here. So here is the question. What is security? Wrong answers only. Some not great answers are when I ask people about security, they go, oh, well, I just, I lock my doors. I lock my doors. My doors are locked. I'm secure. I got all my possessions in there. Like, short of somebody kicking down the door, or I'm good. Say, okay. Other people, I ask them how they know that they're secure, and they say, well, I'm consistently vigilant and prepared for the worst to happen at all times. Every single moment of every single day, I am locked in and aware. This is how I grew up. My dad was always on guard. Other people say, well, I know how to take care of myself. I got a good posture, and I can walk around, I can punch people in the face and they'll hurt really bad. And then some people, when they get to that mindset, they go, well, I got a gun. Makes me feel safe. And with all these, the consistent theme of feeling safe comes up over and over again. It is feeling safe. And just because you feel safe doesn't mean you actually are. If you've not gone through the process of actually evaluating and determining what threats are and how to address them, but you're taking steps that make you feel safe, you're just engaging in something that we call a narrow view of security. Please join us. Come on in. Hi.
This is Erica,
Hi, Erica.
the chair of the board of Sierra Commons.
Nice to see you. Yes. Another thing that I like to think about when a narrow view comes up is something called security theater. Has anybody ever heard of this term before? Anybody? This is new. Oh, good. It's a new term. I like presenting new terms to people. Well, instead of getting into what security theater is and explaining a situation, I thought I'd just show you. So I have a little video here. Hopefully it'll play. This is a perfect example of security theater. This guy is supposed to be patting people down, and I don't know if you're seeing, but he's doing a great job. So this is exactly what a lot of people are engaging in on a daily basis. They don't actually take real steps to evaluate what the risk is. The risk of somebody bringing, like, this is obviously supposed to prevent somebody from bringing something in to whatever arena or event this is. And it is not accomplishing that at all. But I can guarantee you, if you were going into an arena and people said, oh, there were people checking every single person at the door, you'd feel pretty secure. And that assumption of security would be false. So here, let's talk about what security actually is. Anybody? You know what security is? What is it? It's like, we know what it is when we talk about it. We know what we mean. But if we're going to actually think about this in a clear and concise way, we have to define it. As much as I hate definitions in politics, it's like progress is defined. No, but we have to go over this. So security is protection against loss or harm. Here's an interesting thing about this, that is not a specific definition. Loss or harm doesn't have to come from a bad actor. Loss or harm can come from circumstance. When you have a bad circumstance, you have to be able to prevent against that. Being secure in your possessions, in your knowledge, in your documents, in your identity, doesn't mean that it's just against an external threat incoming directed from a malicious actor. It can be from yourself. Being secure and having things in place that evaluate those risks and mitigate those risks based on the resources that you have. That's really what security is about. It's the process of evaluating, the ongoing process of evaluating risk, then working to mitigate those risks within the resources that you have available, mental, physical, monetary resources. Here is the biggest piece. You cannot be free of risk. You have to understand and evaluate the risks you're taking at any given moment. So for instance, driving fast is a risk. The threat is harm or loss. The understanding the difference between risk and threat now. Yes. This isn't TV, I can hear you. Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's like a chair. All right. So driving fast is a risk. Actually, driving at all is a risk. You could get injured driving. In fact, owning a car is a risk too. Just owning it, you could suffer theft or loss or damage to the car. As well as keeping your keys in a jar outside of your front door with a neon sign that says free car is also a risk. But the threat is you. So these risks that we see there, it's important to know that and to see and evaluate that the risks that you have versus the threat of loss and harm. The risks are different. The weight of them is different. If you were to put your keys outside, middle of a busy street, say free car, versus just driving down the street or parking your car in a parking lot and locking it, the risk is very different. Threat's the same. Getting your car stolen. So we're going to cover that. I know this is the talk. There's some juice here. It's not all like this. I just wanted to let you know. This is the beginning. We're getting this little, so
It's juicy.
there's some juice. Juice. But why should you care about security? If it's not obvious to you that you care about many things in your life, whether they're possessions, whether they're pieces of information, things that you can do, or people in your life that you can care about, you need to protect those as best as you can, given the resources that you have. Does that mean that you put everything in a box and then bury that box under 5 feet of cement? No. But you can take steps to protect. But let's get really specific, because everything in your life has an access point. If you were to bury it, it wouldn't. Maybe you would even forget where it was. But if you need to use money, you have to be able to have a bank card to be able to access it with a PIN. You have to type in. Maybe you scan it on your watch. It gives you a biometric verification somehow. So yeah, to use money, you have to have that as an access point. You have your stuff. You have your data, your pictures, your documents. This is what I call your digital and your physical assets. They're not real. It's data, but it's your digital and your physical assets. That's very different than your identity. Your social media logins, your passwords, your social security number that I asked for earlier. This is your digital and physical life. Effectively, if I gain access to that, short of your fingerprints, I am you. And then, of course, you have your physical well-being, the well-being of those around you. So I like to remember this. Life is complicated. You can run to the woods. You can. Not these woods like people from San Francisco think, but the actual woods, the real woods, the middle of nowhere. Or you can adapt to the woods. You have to choose one or the other. But as Robert and I were talking earlier, in this really complex world, the people who design these systems believe that these are the only systems you're going to be using, and they treat it with such a high level of complexity and adoption that They think that your life is simple and all you need is their product. And you have to find ways of organizing these within the resources that you have, which are incredibly limited. All of us are most likely overworked. We are underpaid. We're tired. So we have to find a way to live life through those limits. But I think before we really start going on this, it's important to think about this as when you should think about security. And I'm sure you've heard the story of when's the best time to plan a trade?
10 years ago
10 years ago. And when's the second best time?
today.
Today. Like right now. Security is the same way. I think about it in two categories. So you have just-in-time information and just-in-case information, also known as WIDE and DUL in school. This is when you have just-in-time information, it's information you can get just in time. Like, what's the capital of Maine? Personally, off the top of my head, I can't remember with 100. I think it's Augusta. I'm not sure. Maybe that's Georgia. I don't know, but I can look that up. I have a phone in my pocket. I can get that just in time. But when somebody needs CPR on the ground right next to me, I can't get that information just in time. I need it just in case something like that happens. So this is how we need to approach security. We need to do it ahead of time, ahead of any threats that should be coming our way. Because if we don't, we are going to be caught out. We haven't evaluated the risk, and we're going to be unprepared. So let's address it. What's a threat? What's a risk? We've been over this a little bit before. A threat is a malicious or negative event that takes advantage of a vulnerability. Sentence is actually pretty deep. Malicious or negative doesn't have to come from a malicious actor, it just can be a bad thing. But it has to come from a vulnerability. Now, this is the thing. If we all have vulnerabilities in every single place. If you have an impenetrable object, there's nothing that you can do with that. You can build a building, make there no doors, no windows, no information transfer in or out, but you can't do anything with that building. You can't run a business in it. You can't house people in it. Oxygen couldn't even get in. People would die. So in reality, in the real world that we're living in, every single space and system that we have has vulnerabilities. Now, risk is the potential for loss and damage when a threat does occur. So a threat is all the bad things that could happen: theft, invasion, pickpocketing, maybe a data leak that leaves your identity being stolen, or the earth opens up beneath you and swallows you whole. Very unlikely to occur, but some places it does. But right here, that's not really a very valid threat. So if you look at the risk of that threat, which is the likelihood and impact should the threat come, what's the likelihood of the earth opening up underneath me right now? Next.
Mines and
Yeah, but for real, next thing
I know.
like, I'm on
Just
a
you
floor,
say
like,
this is not the place where it's happening. It's actually more the
Have you been to
place.
the stone house lately?
That's true. Okay,
There's
all
a
right.
very mature walnut tree hanging down.
The gates of hell opening up. All right, how about that? So threat is the bad thing, risk is the likelihood and the impact of the bad thing. So for instance, home invasion, bad thing. Likelihood of home invasion is going to happen in a population of 200, where you have security cameras outside and you're on this giant place where you're living with 400 people in this compound. Okay, in that unique scenario, be very little. So you need to, we're gonna talk about my dad. My dad growing up was, we did call him Mr. Safety, at least my mom did. Started calling him Mr. Safety. Think about my dad, he's a Vietnam vet. He's been in careers where security matters for every single one of those, but not in a calculated way. And when I was growing up, every single threat that was possible was treated as if it was imminent. This is an issue. It shouldn't be how we approach this stuff. crossing the street. Until I was 13, he made me hold his hand. We crossed the street together, and there are no cars around. And he treated the risk of a car coming, or the risk of a home invasion, or sorry, the threat of a home invasion, or the house burning down randomly, as having the same likelihood as us getting hit by a bomb coming from an aircraft above. As likely as somebody borrowing a penny from the take a penny leave. All treated the same. And I can tell you one thing, it led to an incredibly stressful environment, which regardless of how you treat it, you need to be aware that you have limited resources and that you don't spend resources where they don't have you. You have mental, physical, and financial resources, like I said before, each one of those limited. So when we approach this whole concept of security, I want you to be aware that we're going to pre-allocate a certain amount of effort to preventing. Then we are going to have a certain amount to handle it, and a certain amount to recuperate from it. We'll get into that in a bit. But first, this is a helpful way to think about it. I know it's weird. So here we have the potential damage of a threat. And we have the ease of the attack. Okay, this is from the world of penetration testing. So when we think of an attack, we think of a malicious actor. We think of an attacker actually trying to break into a system and do real damage. These are what we call gray hats. You know the term black hat? Anybody? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And a white hat is like a good hacker. These are gray hats. They act as bad people while being good people. So it can also be called red hats. So over here, we have that borrowing a penny from the take a penny, leave a penny frame. It's fairly easy to do. You just reach over and grab it. Nobody's really gonna bust you for anything. It's not a huge risk to the attacker, so it's a very easy attack to do. But the potential damage is literally like negative, like you're taking trash. So that's that. So then ease of the attack over here is something incredibly difficult. Let's say stealing someone's identity so that you can use their punch card with their coffee rewards on it. Pretty intense to steal somebody's identity, very difficult to do. You need to dress up as them, get full disguise on. And then it's very difficult, but the potential damage incredibly low. Incredibly low. Potential damage here. Ease of attack. If I have a friend of mine that was driving with me, and he reached over to my steering wheel and he pulled it. My car went into the other lane. That is a pretty easy attack, and the potential damage is catastrophic had he done it with malicious intent. So we have this line to imagine, and this is over here. This would be, let's say, breaking into a nuclear weapons facility, stealing a nuke, transporting it across borders, then detonating it at the Olympics. Incredibly catastrophic, next to impossible to do. So it's up here. But what we need to look at is this line. Anything below the line, you can kind of think we don't really need to worry about that much. It's not going to be, and this is a blurry line, it's not going to impact our lives that much. But the more devastating the attack, if I wasn't paying attention at that very moment and corrected, that could have been very catastrophic. So anything on this side of the line, we should develop active countermeasures for. So this is just a way to think about it in my mind that makes things very, very clear. So let's talk about the takeaways, what you're going to get from this talk. And we're getting to it, So you will get an understanding of what may or may not be risks in your life. And you will get real tools to protect yourself, real actual tools. You will walk away from here with knowledge that you didn't have before, that will actively help you mitigate threats in your life that will be coming, will be. And that's it, but that's a lot. Also, this is the super secret stuff. The real takeaway is being able to think clearly about threat and risk without stress. So that's important. So a brief interlude. Why listen to me about this? Who am I? What do I do? What? Me? He said I was a magician. Why? Why are you talking to me? Well, so yes, I used to be a magician. And if you don't know what a magician actually is in their job, it is to understand the social constructs and psychology that makes up the decisions and vulnerabilities of the human mind, and then to exploit them. Essentially, we are social engineers. Social engineers are people who do those penetration testing attacks, but instead of attacking on the web, they're doing it in real life. They're making those vishing or phishing phone calls to try and get information out of a company. They're seeing where the human vulnerabilities are, because in complex systems, you exploit human vulnerabilities because they are always the weakest points. Imagine your business has a policy of you never hold the door for somebody else, especially because you're scanning a badge. You're a research facility after all. Things need to be secure. And there's a colleague, you see the badge around their neck. This colleague happens to be in a wheelchair, carrying a stack of research papers, struggling to get in. Would you not hold the door for them? How terrible for you to obey the company rule over this just human decency, being a decent human moment, just opening the door for them and saying right after. This very attack was performed in a pen testing engagement through a colleague of a friend that will remain nameless. And that was one of the main pieces that people cannot protect against, the human vulnerability. So as a magician, that's what I did, which led me to what I'm doing now. I won't talk so much about the history connecting tissue between then and now, but now I work with a bunch of security professionals, hackers, and engineers cracking cryptocurrency wallets for lockdown. That's one of the two jobs that I have. I do this at a company called Unciphered. We are a white hat engineering and R&D firm focused on cryptocurrency wallet cracking. That's what we do. I also work for an internet freedom company that developed a tool that penetrates sensor walls in Russia, Iran, and other places I can't talk about. And that is Snowstorm. You can go to snowstorm.net. It's a game changer in internet freedom, freeing the internet one connection at a time. That's how I think about it. And then if you look at it, the core of what I've been doing over the last 20 years is finding vulnerabilities, both mental and physical, and exploiting them usually for the benefit of people hiring. So don't just listen to me though, because this is, why are you listening to me? Don't just listen to me. Get other opinions, educate yourself. In fact, we have another opinion of a person that's going to be joining us in just a bit. It's going to be great. So I thought I'd show you just a little bit of what this is. So buckle up, relax. This is one of the pieces of wallet manufacturers today. And we found a way to crack that wallet open in 1 second. Now, this is a massive critical vulnerability for this wallet. Luckily, we contacted the wallet manufacturer and they were willing to work with us to patch their wallet. So then we go into.
So here's how the hack works. You have the CPU and the secure element. The secure element is where you keep your crypto keys. Now, normally the communications are encrypted between the CPU, where the processing is done, and the secure element. Well, it turns out it was not engineered to do so in this case.
And then we get into us actually doing the attack.
One key mini for here.
And here's the moment that it happens.
Bam.
And we print out the mnemonics right there.
Mnemonic.
That's where all money is.
And we bypass the general.
One key is one of the biggest hardware. that is literally what I'm doing today. I find these supposedly secure, complex systems with this group of people. We put these under a microscope and we find vulnerabilities. We document those vulnerabilities. We engage the companies. Hopefully they have something called a bug bounty program, but otherwise we file them in our back pocket in case somebody gets locked up. We are essentially digital cryptography lock picks and locksmiths. That's what we do. However, for valid threats, because we have threats, risks. So let's say you do your risk evaluation, which we're going to get into later, and you do your threat analysis. And I have a rule for how to engage with these particular threats that are valid. I say go for PAR, P-A-R. First one is prevention. This is what you do beforehand. Next one is activation. This is stuff you do while the thing is happening, whatever that thing is. And then recuperation. That's the stuff you do after the fact. So the part 3 process in its breakdown is prevention. This is inventorying your life, securing your assets, building systems and processes, preparing countermeasures, personal and business continuity plan. We will dive deeper into that. And then role play threats and the continuity plan. That is one of the most important pieces, which we will get into pretty deep. If you do not role play what is going on, you will actually not be prepared for it, regardless of how much you plan on paper. If you don't physically go through leaving, this is why fire drills happen in schools. So during the activation, you actually activate the countermeasures that you prepared for. The numbers that you wrote down in your emergency card that you keep in your wallet, you call. That's when that happens. So then you cancel your credit cards, your authorized devices, and you call 911 on. Afterwards, recuperation. You do your inventory gap and evaluation. That just means like, take count of what you lost. You got robbed. What did you get robbed of? Then you have your personal and your business continuity plan. That is where you begin to execute that plan. Continuity plan, which Eric is actually going to talk more about, we're going to break him on it, is how do you continue to not break the chain? Facebook goes down for a week. That's bad. What happens when Facebook gets hacked? They have a continuity plan so that they can limit their downtime and make sure that they get up and running. Your business got burned down to the ground. How do you continue to operate it? It got robbed. It got its front windows broken. How do you continue to operate in your business? How do you make it so that the threat seen through does not actively shut you down in a big way? I know we're talking about some heavy stuff today, but like this is all potentially very real depending on what your threat analysis is. Recuperation, of course, insurance claim activation. Get paid back if you have insurance and get insurance. So we're going to do some thought experiments or how I learned to stop worrying and love the threat. Okay. I'm just trying to so here's some things to keep in mind. These are examples based on real threats that we have experience with. These are not hard and fast rules. These are examples. Please don't sue me. I'm not getting legal advice. And then think about the principles up here. That means awareness, preparation, evaluation, execution, and recovery. In this model, these are the things that you will constantly have to be activating and aware of in each engagement that we're going to be going with. So here's your preliminary need to know. If you're not doing these things, start doing these things immediately. Tell everybody to do these things. This is your prerequisite for taking care of your digital and physical life. More specifically, your digital life. Lock your doors. If you go out, lock your doors. Don't post your active location. There is I didn't include it in this topic, but there is an old magician trick where he would go up, have a person filming him on YouTube. He would go up to people on the street and he would say, "Oh, you, I'm sorry, I'm a magician. Let me do a trick for you." And he would proceed to read their mind. He would tell them about their pets. He would tell them about their family connections. He would tell them about recent losses or wins in their life. He would seem to know every single thing about them. And then he revealed to them how he was doing it. He went on Instagram. He followed recent posts in that geographic location. He found people who were posting moments ago. He would look for those people, find them, look in their history on Instagram, read what they had done, then frame himself as a mind reader when in fact all he was doing was digitally snooping them. Don't post your current location. That's all I got to say about that. Keep your passwords to yourself. Stop. Don't share your passwords. Don't open email unless you know who it's coming from. And by that, I mean verify the email and the website. You can say, oh, this is from Bank of America because it's got a Bank of America logo. When the website is #47097 $249 $pish.co.uk. Like, no. So then also don't just click next when you're installing software. I can tell you how much malware I've had to remove from people's computers and how many times people get ransomware by doing this. So this is the prerequisites if you're not doing that. Oh yeah, also general policy, trust but verify. Just as a general policy. Now, threat number 1, fire. We are all really familiar with this looking at. So how do you evaluate and develop a plan for fire? Some of you have probably already done this. Okay. So story time real quick. YouTuber that I follow had a lab, had filming equipment, had his whole setup all in his house. He was down in Southern California, Santa Barbara, I think. And fires came through. No evacuation plan. Nothing was packed. No warning. He lost a career. Ended up making videos with a borrowed camera in his mom's camper van until he got back and running. If he did not have the following that he had to be able to make a living, he would no longer be able to keep the job that he had because he had to physically move because there was not enough housing. He had to actually move into his parents' place and would have had no sources of income had he not already had a job set up on YouTube, which frankly, very few people can achieve. So when we look at the potential risk of a fire, it's catastrophic. It's something, especially living out here, that we all need to have an active prevention, activation, and recuperation plan for. Because if you don't, excuse my language, we're screwed. I'll say it a different way. So beforehand, clear the tree line. Okay. This is more of an example to show you the things that we're going to be getting into next, because we're really familiar with this. This is how it works. Clear the tree line. Have a go bag. If you don't have a go bag packed just with water, food, your financial document copies, things that you cannot do without, that is packed in your closet, hidden, that you just can't put on and go if you need to, get one. Pack it. It takes 2 hours to make. Get one. Then have an escape route and rally point for your household. Do you know where you are meeting the other people when you have to leave if your house is no longer there and you do not have communication? Do you know where that place is? Do they know where that place is? Do you both know how to get there? Then negotiate with your insurance. See if you can get coverage. Right now that's being pulled from one, including myself. You need a tripwire. If you do not decide what the tripwire is, then the fire is, it's not going to get here. It's not going to get here. If there is fire within 2.5 miles, you leave. That is a tripwire. You make that decision ahead of time. That way, you don't have to make that decision in the moment. Your bandwidth is stretched. Your resources are low. Your anxiety is high. You absolutely need to decide these things ahead of time. Then prepare local countermeasures. This, depending on the fire, because if it's a kitchen fire, yeah, you should have fire extinguisher. If it's a forest fire, You can wet down your grass. Maybe there will be some brief pause there where half your house will get burned, or it will just slow it down a little bit for somebody else further down the fire line. You can have your documents in a safe that is not just fire rated, it is data rated. You need a data rated safe, because if you put electronics, hard drives in a safe that's fire rated and it's not data rated, it'll be gone, because data is erased from hard drives at a much lower temperature than documents burn. So during, what do you do? Real simple. If you have done your preparation beforehand, you execute the evacuation. And you execute the prepared countermeasures. Simple, quick, easy. You know what to do then, you have it written down, you play the plan. You make the plan, then you play the plan. And afterwards, call insurance, call 911. It's something that they're not aware of. You go through the checklist of things that need to be made whole. Be sure to account for non-material possessions, such as your sanity. It's very important. And then engage with the community and external support. When there is a large fire, there are large catastrophes, there are usually after the fact support systems that pop up. So now we're going to talk about email. Yeah, what? You have a question?
Okay, so this is, I know you're just using this as an example,
Sure.
but the go bag
Yeah,
and having documents of like all financial, like I get that there's a fire, I have my
Yep.
information with me. But if someone breaks into my house and steals my go bag, they got all this information that I'm supposed to be having all super encrypted.
yes. Yes, your go bag can be secured in a safe place. Your go bag can be in a safe. Your go bag can be hidden. These are things that if you're keeping you're running up against a countermeasure for a countermeasure.
Yeah.
This is a pretty complex thing, and I would love to talk about that in a minute. But you're absolutely right. If you're consolidating everything, and if you're leaving it out in the living room, or if you're putting maybe your passport in your sock drawer, like that's a risk. All these things are risks, but having copies of your vital documents, or at least locations of your vital documents, backups of your vital documents. Do you need your social security card in your go bag? Or are the vital documents that I'm talking about your insurance contact information? If your insurance contact information is a vital document that's in there, your passport should be somewhere secure and safe. You should be able to access it. And this is another thing to take into account. How long does it take you to get your go bag? If you have a safe that's bolted to the floor, you can open that 5 minutes, 3 minutes. And if you have your more vital documents in there, you can still access it, put it in your go bag and go. But if you don't have the water, the food, the extra pair of clothes, the backup burner phone, if that's your gauge, whatever your thing is, if you don't have those basic needs that are not your vital pieces in that bag, then gathering everything all together is just not feasible. Whereas, yes, you're right, those should have extra care to them. But what I was really referring to is not necessarily like those pieces that put you at risk, but the things that you'll need immediately after you have to evacuate. Thanks. Yeah. Email? Are we ready? Go. Password vulnerabilities hacked or lazy. Anybody know XKCD?
Yeah.
Yes, no, love this comic. It's written by a guy named Randall, who used to work for NASA, and he is an aerospace engineer and does a lot of cool stuff with tech and computers and lots of things. Anyway, password entropy is rarely relevant. The real modern danger is password reuse. How so? Password too weak. Set up a web service to do something simple like image hosting or tweet syndication. A few million people set up free accounts. Bam! You got a few million emails, default usernames, and passwords. Tons of people use one password, strong or not, for most accounts. Use the list and some proxies to try automated logins to the 20 or 30 most popular sites, plus banks and PayPal and such. Now you've got a few 100,000 real identities on a few dozen services, and nobody suspects a thing. And then what? That's where I got stuck. You did this? Why did you think I hosted so many unprofitable web services? I could probably net a lot of money, one way or another, if I did things carefully. But research shows more money doesn't make people happier. Once they make enough to avoid day-to-day financial stress, that is. I could mess with people endlessly, but I can do that already. I could get a political or religious idea out of it. Oh, boy, it goes on and on. Of course, Google's already doing it. So it's time to meet Eric.
Uh-oh.
Been here the whole time.
I can't see anyone. What am I looking at?
You're looking at people. I'm gonna
Oh.
turn the camera around a little bit for you.
Oh my God, full house tonight. Hi everyone, how you doing?
Cool. So I'm gonna focus this back on here a little bit, but
I have the slides up over here, but it seems like you have some slightly new stuff, so I'll try
yes, I
to
do.
play along with the home game.
Okay.
Hey everybody.
Let me introduce you to Eric. I work with Eric as the co-founder of Unciphered. We've known each other and been working together for about 6 years, 7 years.
Bigger number the better, right?
Yeah, right.
At least 6.
Here's a bit of Eric's background, just so you know. Eric is an expert in physical and cybersecurity. I pulled this off the website. I didn't want to write it.
I didn't even write that either. So it's like if someone says it, sure, whatever.
But it is all true. He was a computer and physical security analyst at the Argonne National Laboratory. That's where the Manhattan project was done, where he worked on nuclear security, counter proliferation tools development, and voting machine security. He's also the founder of Rift Recon, a red team that's pen testing the things that we were talking about earlier. A company that developed offensive hardware tools for the penetration tester market. Very interesting.
Yeah. In a previous life, now I do Unciphered full time.
So story time. Eric.
Yeah, so story times. So let's come from the XKCD story, because that's actually quite familiar with me for previous clients at my other company, Rift Recon. So the type of attack you just saw in the comic from XKCD is called credential stuffing. And credential stuffing is quite common. There's also these mega breaches. So I have had a lot of people, not even related to crypto, way before crypto was used as a tool by ransomware gangs to exfiltrate money, where credential stuffing is like you read in the comic, but instead all these breaches like Equifax or other companies, instantly all of you in the room become vulnerable, and it's just an attack surface that's available. So it's not even putting up fake or cheap websites. It's like I check BitTorrent sites all the time to see if like a company got data leaked, because to be honest, there's two sides to this. We use it to help clients break back into their wallets, but it's also, you can use it for the dark arts. And so I've had clients before that have called me saying, I've got locked out of my Gmail, all my stuff's in there. Like I'm a dentist, true story. My entire business is in there. Sometimes people even get threatening emails that may or may not have been because that they got in, but maybe they're trying to scare you. Some of you in the room may have heard of this. Like, we had your webcam on, we have photos and videos, we'll publish them. And so people get really freaked out. But
whether those claims are true or not.
Yeah, a lot of times we have to keep telling people back in the day. I mean, this is happening all the time. I wouldn't be shocked if at least one person in the room has had this problem, maybe two at least, based on who I saw in the room in terms of volume. Not who, I don't know any of you. But basically, those are usually fake, especially if your systems are patched. But normally, in most cases, when someone does get hacked, it's often because of a credential stuffing attack. Because unfortunately, I've had to tell people a lot. This is that you're really not that interesting. Like you're really not, unless you're an executive of a company or someone that's known to have money or celebrity. You still can get hit randomly, and this is how a lot of those attacks work. So there's very preventative measures around that, but generally, oh, we lost some video here. But there's very prescriptive measures that we're going to go through that will stop most of these at the low to mid-level attacks. If someone's very sophisticated and really going after you because you are an executive with money, intellectual property, or a company, you'll have people with much more skills coming after you. But if you don't have, like a lot of my clients in the past, I mean, I've had both ends of it, including executives at the tech companies and the security teams. The email hacking is quite common, but we can, with the steps we're going to show you right now, secure you against most of those basic credential stuffing attacks without any fancy antivirus software.
So the first thing is two-factor authentication. How many people use two-factor right now? Everyone. Oh my God, that's so great.
But what type of two-factor?
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. There's the
Do
whole.
you use it with everything that you log into? No. Almost everything. And now the second question that Eric was getting to, what kind of two-factor do you use? Because as I've heard so many woeful tales, if you're using SMS two-factor where they text you, that is not secure. Not all factors are the same. We're going to get into that. So Eric, next we have a password manager who's using a password manager.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll talk about all these in a sec. We'll get a little deeper dive. Who uses strong passwords? Yes. Do you create your own? Yeah. Or do you have them create it for you? Generate it? Cool. Yeah. Now, who's regularly patching your systems automatically? Actually, this is a better question. Who has a patch that is waiting for you to say yes to on any device that you own right now? Anybody? Patch, security update, a thing that says, oh, you got to update your phone, or Windows. I have a theory that specifically, I think it was Windows XP would just like automatically update in the middle of a thing, and it would take like an hour and a half. So people just would not update Windows, starting with Windows XP. And I'm pretty sure that that has led to a lot of vulnerabilities across network, because as Eric and I will tell you, with even with the attack that we showed you earlier, where the OneKey Mini, which is the largest cryptocurrency hardware wallet sold out of China, sold over 1 million wallets. In the crack that we developed for that, it was incredibly easy to find, but instantly patchable.
I still don't understand what patching your system is.
Oh, so what phone do you have?
I have an iPhone.
You have an iPhone. Do you ever get Apple updates where you have to like say, okay, we're going to restart your phone and it's going to update? That's a patch.
Yeah.
It means that they're coming out with security updates. Now, what that really means is they found security flaws.
Yeah.
And the big thing is, if people don't update their devices regularly, those flaws still exist.
So you're saying to do it regularly? Oh,
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. The more security you want. So for instance, we had a client very recently come to us with a OneKey that was locked out. Eric, mute your mic.
Oh, sorry.
With a device that was locked out. Now, when we engaged OneKey, we used their bug bounty program, and they came out with a patch for the vulnerability that we found. We have seen from them that not everyone, in fact, the grand majority of people have not updated their OneKey. They have not updated the firmware. So that means that regardless of the patch being out there closing this vulnerability, we still have people coming directly to us to use the vulnerability to get them back into their crypto wallets. This can happen with any system. So there actually was a system, I think it was using Alexa, where people would go up to the house and say, Alexa, open front door. And it would just open the front door if it had no time.
It's so interesting that I know many people who are not really security phone aware. They're very actually reluctant, or they think it's not a good thing to update their phone.
Yeah, I don't.
And I used to think that way. And I changed because of my new career.
Yeah, right.
And researching, but I hear it all the time.
I hear it all the time too. I don't quite understand it. I think people have different reasons for it, but
I think technology is going too fast, and there's this kind of still reserve of like, we don't want to completely fall into it, but they are anyway.
I think also everyone's got an update that changed something that they relied on. Like I got an update, like when I updated from Windows 10 to Windows 11, now all the motor function that I had to shut down my computer has to change. Now I'm switching over to Apple as well now because the laptop. So I have a whole new system that I have to learn. I think people are afraid of adapting to change.
Right.
So they just say, well, any change is bad. So let's not update, and that's leaving them incredibly vulnerable. So during an email hack, contact your system administrator. If you have a closed email system, an ecosystem, you need to contact your system administrator if your email has gotten hacked. Absolutely. And if you are on a personal account, you need to go through a reset process. Now, you can go and attempt a secondary email access override if you have given parent permissions to a different email. I kind of sometimes, depending on the system, will do that. So that there's a cascade of changes where if one piece has been made vulnerable, then I can do a roundabout system of accessing through other email accounts that will then potentially get me access again. But really, during there isn't more to do. So then afterwards, lock and reset your services through your system administrator. And if you are on a personal email account, you will have to engage directly with Google. They do have systems that can reset if you prove your identity. So if you get locked out of your Google account, they can verify it through not just your number like texting you, but they have a secondary and tertiary verification. So now we're going to talk about two-factor authentication. Eric, are you still there?
I'm still here. I have a cat that meows, so I'm muting when I can. And we have a new puppy. Hi, I'm over here. You can't. Anyway, yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Right, so,
We can dub this later.
yeah. So we are going to talk about two-factor authentication, specifically what factors are the best. So first, what is two-factor? You said you all use two-factor. I just like to use the metaphor of a submarine missile launch style of security where you have two keys, except you possess both of them. But obviously, if somebody copies one of them, they're not going to be able to launch a missile. So you need both keys in order to access that missile launcher. Now, what do you need to know? Not all factors are equal. I've said it before. I hashtagged not all factors. I made it so that you know that factors have different levels of vulnerability. So what you should avoid is SMS two-factor. Now, Eric, tell us why we should avoid SMS two-factor, please.
Yeah. Have any of you heard of, I can't see the crowd, but SIM jacking? You say,
We have heads nodding.
there we go. Yeah. So SIM
Heads
jacking.
shaking.
Yeah. So how many of you have you heard SIM jacking of not just taking over your email accounts, but your bank accounts and your crypto accounts? There's a few nods. You heard it in the news. Okay. So what SIM jacking is someone has usually social engineered into a telephone company and pretended to be you. And they through those mega breaches, they're getting your information like email, name, birth date, social security number, which turns out your social security number really isn't that secure. It never really was designed to be secure, but that was also a long time ago, before all of us were born, that they created that, and could never see that everyone could have all access to all information in the world at the same time. So usually they'll call and have your number ported to another SIM card, a SIM card they have prepped so that when they plug into their phone, they can get the recovery SMS number. So it'd be like, whatever digit number your bank sends to you, or a Gemini or Coinbase or Kraken account, which they've turned off actually, pretty much all of them. And so what happens is once they get that, they can do a reset of your email, where that's your entire life, basically. All your bank stuff goes to it, all your crypto, social media, groceries, pharmacy, love letters, everything. And so once they get there and they already know all the parts, because what they're normally doing is going to each of those financial account systems, testing your emails and know, oh, this is the reset, because they're not going to get in because they usually need another factor, like the code that goes to your email, to your phone, but they need to have access to your email. So they either manipulate the AT&T, or as we've seen in a lot of cases, like tens of millions stolen recently, they had a guy literally go to the store and pay someone $100 or $1,000 at the register to walk away and have them manually change the number. It wasn't very sophisticated, but once they get in, it's even less sophisticated than you think. They get to your email, they do a password reset on your, let's say, Coinbase account. The email comes in, they already have access. It takes like 20 seconds once they get that going. Then they log in and then they dump your accounts. And that's a very common use of SIM jacking, because the money's not reversible like normally with like a Bank of America. So Now that's with SMS. Now to prevent that, you would use a different type of two-factor system that is not SMS based, and we'll definitely go over that.
Yeah, so this is actually when we're going to go over that right now. You can be your own factor. I like saying this because normally two-factor is something where you have a device. Well, I actually carry around my two-factor on my keychain occasionally. I have it right here. Yeah, I know. This isn't a number. This is a unique identifier that I have, that when I'm logging into something, it will query me to plug in this device. And I have to tap it. It is not a remote system. It is a hardware system with tech inside of here that makes sure that this is the only device that is doing that, that there is not some other device that is constantly plugged in, that it pings a query and you respond by tapping this little capacitor on the outside. This is something called a Google Titan. So these are like $30 plus couple shipping. So $70, 2 times two-factor key, WTF. That's our system. This is what we recommend for you. YubiKey and Google Titan. 2 brands. YubiKey and Google Titan. I actually have one of both. Get one. Actually, no. No. Get 2. Get 2 of them. 2. Here's why. 2 of each. No, one. Just 2 devices. They do exactly the same thing. They're just 2 different manufacturing brands. Their technology is. Eric might have information on which one he believes is more secure, but the level of security we're talking about is infinitesimal differences above the stratosphere. So it is, they're both incredibly secure devices. And then this is what you have. You have one that stays on you, and you have one that stays home. Here's why this is an incredibly secure system. We're going to get into kidnapping in a bit. But if for some reason you have somebody who is abducting or taking you, you can break this in half. It's a piece of plastic. You still have access to your accounts if you have another one. If you're abroad and you need to log into your accounts, you leave the other one with a trusted individual. You call them, or you leave it in a place where you can direct them to get it. And I definitely have one. People know where it is. They don't know what it is, but they know the location. They know that I can describe it to them. And that way, if I need to destroy this in the moment, very easy. If I am in a stressful, distressful situation where I need to protect my identity and access to my accounts. For sure. $70 to secure your entire life.
But 2 things I want to bring up, which is one analogy is think of it like your house keys. Whenever you get a new lock, you always get 2 keys, right? One is a backup. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now we're going to talk about password managers. Your password book. Anybody have a password book? They write stuff.
You know, someone who does.
I still have a copy of mine, like an idiot. That's oh, shit. I do. But it is not a safe place for vital information. Sometimes the threat is coming from inside the house, as in you. We are all our own threats. Because the threat of loss or harm is not just in somebody else accessing your accounts. This is a thing that happened to me about a decade ago. I used a password book religiously. Everything written down in there, had it in the safe place. And then it got wet. And I got locked out of pretty much everything I could remember. There was a lot in there. I could remember my vital stuff. I had my banking info and things like that. But there were other like little niche accounts that like I had a DeviantArt that I saved a bunch of stuff to. And I'm forever locked out of those places because I didn't have a secure place to store my passwords. Password managers prevent that as well as many other threats against loss. Real quick catch up, get 2 Google Titans or YubiKeys and have them be your 2-factor. This is what they look like. Cool.
Okay. I'm more
Trying
confident.
to get you up.
Thank you.
Now that was the last one. Now, password managers, yes, sometimes you don't want to be your own worst enemy. So. Do you have a mind palace? Anybody here have a mind palace? Know what a mind palace is? Mind palace? Do you have one?
I don't.
I don't either. Yeah, do you have one? I don't either. Anybody have one? Has anybody met someone who has one for real? For real? Well, this is something Eric says a lot, which is, I don't know of a single person that can memorize unique and complicated passwords for every device, service, and login without error. If that person can do that reliably, my hat is off. Short of the one person that I have ever even heard of that can do that, we're all mortal. And we are all fallible. And if you cannot memorize every single one of those, you need a place that is secure to keep your passwords. Password managers, that is the answer. Pick one, use it religiously. That is my prescription. There's OnePass, there's LastPass, there's Dashlane, Firefox, iOS, Chrome, and on and on and on and on and on.
There was not.
Understand how it works. What?
There was not.
Oh, there were,
Wait, what?
you were using LastPass right now.
Yeah.
It wasn't us.
I use it.
It's
I
not,
use
not
it.
the one that got.
They get,
It got compromised, but
But-
it's, you know,
Okay. so I would-
yeah, then everybody changed their passwords and.
Yeah, I have a note for this, which is there's always a risk using a cloud-based password manager. I don't use one. I have to copy them manually, and that would prevented me from any of those issues. But the convenience is there that everyone just wants to have, but you don't understand the risk you're taking on. And these machines are written by humans, so they can be fallible, even though they may be better. There's something to think about.
Yeah. If, for instance, you can also use two separate systems. If you have passwords that are so vital for your information, for instance, your banking login, keep that offline. If your social media, you are willing to take the risk because you believe that you will not be in a place where that will be compromised quick enough for you to not be able to change your password using one of these password managers when there is a leak. If you're willing to take that risk, take it. But understand that that is a risk that you are calculatedly taking. That's what this is about. You cannot avoid risk. That's how we started this. You cannot avoid risk. There is risk in every system, every single system. So we can make compromises in places in a calculated way for convenience. I do it. I definitely do it. But I understand that I'm making those calculated risks.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So you have Firefox and Chrome on there.
Sure, yeah.
You're not talking about the, when the browser asks you to keep the password, are you? That's not the same thing. I'm assuming it's not.
No, that is the same thing. It is a password manager.
Oh, and that's secure?
Well, no, wait, there's a definition of what's secure, and that's usually time and effort and resources to attack. So it's like, is it a nation state North Korea hacker, or is it like the kid down the street that's learning YouTube hacking tutorials? Like they have very different skill sets.
So the other idea is that we're going to get into is with that particular thing. Are you a target for a North Korea or like elite China hacker? Are you particularly a target?
And one other thing I want to throw in here is the two-factor device we're talking about earlier. Even with the LastPass hack, if you had your two-factor turned on, which means it requires for your Twitter, your bank, whatever, to also tap once you plug in the device to touch it, because they all require you to touch it. It prevented any of those accounts from getting hacked into by those people. So even if they have your password, they still couldn't get in.
So, how are we doing? Okay, yeah, we're. So everybody get password managers, cool. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, got it.
What do you mean by keeping it offline?
Uh,
What's an example of how you do that?
Like Eric was saying, cloud-based, there are service options where you can have it so that it connects everything behind the scenes, or you can have it so that it's really just kind of like a repository that you store on your device, but it's using their system, their like graphic user interface. And then it has its own cryptography on your device that it uses to lock that. then you can copy manually over those passwords rather than having it just link your accounts together. You're just saying that.
Okay.
So let's talk about crypto. Here's a preamble. Crypto is secure, said some crypto bro. I invested in crypto. Only what you can afford to lose, right? Only what you can afford to lose, right? This is what Eric and I are living in the world of. We hear people who believed a system was secure, bet everything they have into that system because they heard it was secure with no third-party evaluation, or the third party was wrong, or it was misguided, or they skipped a bunch of information. And it leads them to threat number 3, crypto stolen or online banking exploitation. So what we're talking about. Your email can lead to this. There are a lot of attack vectors here, a lot of different ways that this can come in. So let's get into it. Beforehand, no SMS two-factor authentication token. Gone over that. Now, here's a really cool thing. Have a dedicated financial services email. Have an email that attaches only to your sensitive documents. Don't use it for anything else. Use it for that, because if your other email gets compromised, then your finances are safe.
One other thing with that account, which is also useful, is if you're only using it for your bank, utility, and financial services, generally, they don't share your email for marketing purposes. Social media sites do, and others don't. If you start getting marketing emails, it usually indicates that someone actually has compromised their systems.
Yeah. So then you can switch your email, switch your logins, switch everything, and use it kind of as a canary in the coal mine.
Apologies, the cat was meowing.
So then Eric says, use Google Fi for an added layer. This is a little bonus because this is Google Fi. You're talking about SIM jacking, right? Eric?
He's gone.
All right.
Sorry, no, I'm here. Yes.
Thinking about if you are using SMS two-factor authentication, Google Fi has not ever been cracked. That's a news.
The phone, I mean the phone.
Yeah, the phone there.
Shoot.
You don't have to. You don't have to use two-factor SMS.
No,
Right.
One thing with Google Fi is that you have to log in through your Gmail before the person will even talk to you on the phone. And if they can't verify you, they won't do anything with your account. Even if your account is protected on any of the major cell providers, people can social their way in still, as much as they say they're protected. And the main thing is they don't actually serve liability to the customer if they get hacked currently. So they don't really care. Google, they like to keep your free information protected.
So this is another really important thing just to be aware of is portfolio management, diversify to protect against loss. You're not just trying to protect against somebody hacking into your account. You're also trying to actively prevent if something does happen, but do it ahead of time. If you have diversity in the ways that you can access, for instance, in the form of crypto, if you have it all on one wallet and that wallet gets compromised, then all your crypto is gone. In banking, if that bank gets compromised, if everything was in SVB, and you were an investor in SVB, and then SVB thing happened the other week, then your money's gone.
You talking both about online wallets and passive wallets?
I mean, for instance, like whether it's like we don't really look at cold storage wallets and like hot wallets as being the split. We don't look at hardware or software as being the split. We look at it as custodial and non-custodial wallets. So yeah, but either way, still with these managed wallets, like what happened with FTX, that was all custodial. So yeah, cold and hard storage, and we're going to get a little bit into what can go wrong with crypto, which is I think important nowadays. I just do. So during this thing, call the bank, custodial wallet service to freeze your accounts. That's absolute yes. If there is a hack, then you need to immediately call Secret Service and FBI separately and set up cases with each of them. This is something that we recommend all of our well, not clients because we don't actually actively engage with them, but people who come to us saying my crypto wallet has been hacked and emptied. Okay, very little you can do in that case. However, we are seeing these wallets getting seized in different places in the future. And if you did file a case then, the tracking, if it is accurate, and if the money amount has not gone through something like Tornado Cash or something like that, then it can be traced back to you. And we are seeing some people now being paid whole after these events. So filing, having that paper trail, really, really important.
To tack onto that, because we do actually have enough volume that we're setting automated emails for when people click stolen, hacked. We're going to be in like, depending, like we're just going to say, if you're which country, contact them. But those organizations are just getting spun up with the tools to actually fight the crime. And as you're seeing, like there was a case in December where they extradited several Estonians who had hundreds of millions of dollars on devices that they had stolen. So it's happening. But they're not 911 services.
Yeah.
Like some people are saying, I'm like, they didn't get it back to me. I'm like, what?
Wait,
No
10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the way it is now. There's more robust stuff coming, but it will take time with all these new technologies.
So then afterwards, evaluate your loss. Like, money's gone. Sorry. Deal with the banks and exchanges to make yourself whole, and then work with tracing companies if you can. If this is specifically with crypto, so CipherTrace is one company that we do recommend their services. So yeah, onward. Threat number 4, kidnapping. Some heavy stuff up here. Specifically, Eric's history with Art of Escape, doing anti-KNR, which is kidnap and ransom. We're going to talk about 2 common scenarios. First one is kidnap for ransom, and then the next one is express kidnapping. I want to say this up front. Most likely, you will not experience kidnap for ransom if you experience kidnapping at all. But if you will experience kidnapping, it will most likely be in the form of express kidnapping. Express kidnapping is you are handled to an ATM by some people that you cannot physically escape and made to withdraw your entire max amount that you can at that moment, and then mugged. It is a transaction, and afterwards they will leave you quickly. Usually this experience takes less than an hour from begin to end. Eric has quite a history in dealing with prevention of kidnapping, specifically working with on the executive side and the high net worth clients side for kidnapping prevention. That is mainly for kidnap for ransom. We can talk a little bit about that, but we are mainly going to give you the tips, especially if you're traveling, for preventing or mitigating express kidnapping. Everybody get that? Okay. Eric, you want to get into a little bit of your background when it comes to this stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I started Rift Recon in 2012, which was mostly focused on physical access. And by that, I mean breaking into banks, breaking into data centers, breaking into organizations to, like, if you've seen the movie Sneakers or any hacking film where you have a company that breaks into places, that's what I started back then after my Department of Energy job. And I met a executive in a tactical clothing company in the Bay Area where I live now. And he said, hey, I'm looking at all these KNR, anti-KNR or anti-kidnap and ransom classes. And I was wondering if you knew anyone. I looked into it. I was like, I knew quite a few people, but I didn't really feel that they were doing things with what I would say the fidelity that really matters, especially providing the heightened situations with people who have actually relied on the skills. And one of the things I do, like working with Nick and others, is find people who are specialists in their areas that I'm not. One, so I can learn for cheap, but two is actually have a person when we give trainings and whatever I've done or with companies I've built and other organizations, that when they ask a question, like if you ask a social question in the room, everyone there, you would ask Nick, because Nick could give context. I can give context to breaking and entering. But then we had people there from formerly the CIA who's retired out who had to rely on these skills for 20 years themselves. And so they can give, a very contextual answer. So we did that for about 6 years because I thought it was like, well, why don't we just build that? I focus on the core area I know, and they focus on the areas. And it did very well. It was not inexpensive, but we were told by people who did go through the CIA later and retired, they said, wow, this is the closest thing we had to the farm. That's in the commercial space. For those who don't know, that's where the people in the CIA go to for training when they start. So that's what I built. That's some background. We had lots of clients, and also a lot of clients who had been kidnapped previously are ones that were clear afterwards of training that like, wow, this definitely, it seemed like I was going to, or in situations where it had happened. But generally what we do is preventative in that, which is, you know, more of like the common sense stuff to prevent you from even getting into the situation in the first place, which also works. It turns out through our courses, we had 50% female attendees because it got around that a lot of these skills were very useful. And I didn't realize for local stuff, for women traveling at night in cities, it turns out it's very translatable from the international course we're giving. So that's a little bit of my background.
So a lot of this is heavy preventative. We do have some mitigation during and after the fact. So let's just dive into it. First things first, this is research where you're traveling. If you do not know where you're traveling, if you do not know the location, the layout, how the buses work, how the trains work, how systems work in that area, what it's like to pay for something, you can run into a lot of trouble. If you do not know that you pay up front in these places and you pay after the fact in these places, you will get people who will request you pay up front in these places that don't even work in those establishments. Just to understand how the systems of and the social architecture of a place works so that you can identify when something is not right and feel that you need to get out of it. So research the places you're traveling. If it's also very dangerous, kidnapping is a real risk there that is very high and active. Know that ahead of time and plan other things to prevent you from getting into trouble. So know the basics of the language. Yeah, if you don't know how to say help, stop, and if you don't know how to say I don't speak the language, if you don't know how to say money, you won't know when somebody's asking you for yours. You might not know that you are being kidnapped when it's happening if you don't know the very basics of the language. So wherever you're going, and if you need to have a card that has we always recommend to have an emergency part on you for risk mitigation, just to prevent.
We go into, if you don't want me to go into what you should put on that card.
We have that in a bit. Hold on one second.
All right, cool. All right.
So move with purpose. This is interesting because it's so there was a study that was done, I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, where they interviewed it was a series of con artists, thieves, kidnappers, muggers. They had like people who were convicted for these crimes. And they asked them, how did you choose your targets? The most recurring data point in reasons why they avoided targets were because they moved with purpose. That was the most recurring data point. What does that mean? It's an energy, a forward energy. If you are going around, looking around, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pickpocket things that happened to me in Spain that I tried to get pickpocketed, but we'll get into that a bit.
One other data point is don't stare at your cell phone with the headphones plugged in. That's what gets most people caught, period, nowadays, especially the younger generation.
Yeah. So go out with someone or with groups. If you are alone, go to crowded places, go to places where there will be not super crowded places, not dense crowds, not concerts, things like that, but go to places where there are groups of people if you are alone. But please try and go out with someone, at the very least one person, preferably more. During daylight, if you are traveling in super dangerous areas, earlier, pre-10 a.m. or 10 p.m. is like the real cutoff, but during daylight, it is the safest way to go about it. So hire a trained driver. Drivers in, if you are taking Ubers, there are a lot of ways that you can be compromised in an Uber situation. There are taxis, same issue. Walking around, even bigger issue. If you hire a driver at a day rate, they are there when you need them. They will wait for you. They will take you from location to location. Hit them well. but not too well. Because then you might be a target. Eric
Oh.
said, like, if you tip them $10,000, they're gonna know you're super well.
Yeah. One other thing is also they know good restaurants often.
Yeah, they do. So become good friends with the concierge, local business owners, also tip them well, if tipping is appropriate culturally, that is. If you're in Japan, do not tip. Do not tip in Japan. Yeah.
Or in Germany. That's another one I found out years ago.
Keep on you only what you are okay to lose. You're out and about. And you have all of the cash on you that you are planning to use on the trip, and you're there for another month. No, bad. Have on you an emergency card. Have on you your emergency card. We recommend getting these laminated ahead of times. They have emergency contact information. They have the contact information of every single person that you are with. They have the contact information of the hotel that you're staying at, of the person that you booked the Airbnb with. The contact information that you need. And if it falls into somebody else's hand, it is not valuable. That's the important part. It is not your social security number. It is not that kind of emergency number. It is the information that you will need as a reference to get out of a situation if you get into one.
And if you're traveling internationally, embassy numbers too, they all have them.
Yeah, embassy numbers, addresses are very useful for places that are places that you need to go, specifically embassies, because if you do not speak the language in a place and you need to go somewhere, you can go up to an official, someone, anyone, and literally point to the embassy, and they can take you there. It may take a couple of tries, may take some negotiation, but you might be able to get there. Copies of your vital travel documents beforehand. Are these on you? No. These are wherever you are not. If you get mugged, you lose your ID and you lose your passport, it is much easier to get those back if you at least have a representation of them. So if you don't make copies of those so that you can have them as a reference for the embassy to actually look you up, that is way easier than saying, I'm this person, believe me. You're going to go into an interview process. They're going to try and find that. They're going to try and get data. They're going to thumbprint you. It's a process. Situational awareness is a huge piece. It's such a big umbrella term that I hesitated to put it. It's why I put it less. It's because I wasn't going to put it in here. But situational awareness, specifically basic evasion tactics. If you believe at that point that you are being followed, if you believe that you are being targeted, you will need to be able to evade a person. If you're in a place with a subway, hanging out in the middle of a door and moving on or off as the doors are closing can give you a 50-50 shot, a little bit less than 50-50 shot of evading somebody by moving to another platform. Depending on if the subways are still running. If you are in a grid system, like in Barcelona, you can do a 2-in-1 chess move over as you move through the city. And it will actually make it more difficult for you if you are being followed by a team, because they will have to move further in both directions. And so chess moves, if you're in a grid system.
Yeah. For that, which we taught a lot and actually had people in cities practice it with professionals who knew how to find people. It's called the stair-step maneuver. And so there's a technique in surveillance called the eye. And so basically you need to always at least minimum 3 people. And the reason is so that if you're doing, let's say going, like at least his chess moves are a stair step, there's variations, but you go up, right, left, and you kind of like zigzag across. They have to rotate in a direction, either counterclockwise or clockwise. And the thing is, if you see someone that you're like 6 blocks away in a random direction that you see again, it's likely an indication that someone or someone's are following you. And it gives you the opportunity to not look backwards so they know that you know they're coming.
Right. So the situational awareness thing, try and keep track of the people that you see. If you see somebody over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, they just might be following. So if you have been targeted, know that you can escape out the back of buildings. Restaurants usually have back entrances. If you're in older cities like Prague, they have passages that will take you through the blocks, and those doors are rarely locked on either side. So, but understand this all comes from step number one, research where you're traveling. Know what the layout of buildings are like, know what typically is unlocked, know if you can get roof access or not. Know if you can, what?
I mean, where would be a source where you can look up Spanish? Like these situations, Spain.
Travel guides,
Okay.
anything like that. And also, state department websites have risk analysis for certain places, but really looking at travel guides for not necessarily the ones where you see it's very curated, locked off tripods, things like a TV show, but something that is more human, more off the cuff, something where you can actually look at not what they're trying to tell you, but you can look at the systems happening in real time. You can look at a walkthrough of an open air market as somebody's going through trying different spices, and you can make the evaluation for yourself because you have a long enough time to see how the transactions are taking place. You can get a feel for it as if you're there without being there. Another thing is to talk to people who've been there. Whenever I travel to a new place, I always talk to people who live there. Always. Now with the internet, it's crazy. So, yeah. Do you have upcoming travel plans?
Not really, not.
Good answer. Good answer. Even if you did, good answer.
Mhm. One other thing is state.gov. Pick the country you're going to. They give always updates on most countries that they're operating in. I was just in Guatemala, and it was definitely a big red. You're like, could be kidnapped. And people I was with locally were like, you absolutely will not travel. We're not going to let you travel locally. You're a white person. You're going to get grabbed. So I was like, okay, good to know. We went to Antigua, low crime. But locals definitely made sure I was like, I want to go out, and like, you're not going out. But state.gov also gave me that information.
So, yeah.
So one of the other resources, because I know the State Department actually publishes like do not travel type stuff. And then I don't know if any of you work with bigger companies, but usually a risk management department will have like. They have kidnap and ransom insurance.
Yeah.
And companies like Clayton will actually provide analyses on which countries and what to look out for because it's pretty obvious.
As well as they'll be able to negotiate on your behalf as well.
People exactly. And also the bad guys know that.
Yeah.
Because they know they have insurance.
Yeah.
So that's another thing.
Eric, you want to handle that's more your domain.
Yeah, I can answer a lot of questions around that. Hiscox is another company, just depends where you live. Hiscox is an international insurance broker and carrier. If anyone wants to go look up like anything about kidnap and ransom, they have a great page. Just look up Hiscox, write this down, HISCOX.com. But if you type Hiscox in Google and K and R like ampersand, you can get some quick stuff, but it turns out it's not very expensive, but not everyone really needs it. It's usually about $1,000 a year, regardless of how much income you really do have or where you travel, because they've modeled it where they're going to call people who are former military to come negotiate and get you out. So it's like, and also I found this when running my company doing this, doesn't matter what training you take, they're not going to give you a better rate. Their models are so that they just know, regardless of your training level, what the price is going to be, which I found very interesting. So like, no matter how hard we tried with our training, even though we thought it was some of the best in the country at the time, it's just like, it's $1,000. And then they call a company like Control Risks, which is, I think, founded by former British SAS out of the UK, and they operate in most countries. But yeah, if you're at a big company, you usually have a head of security who pays for reports like that for executives traveling. But yeah, the freebie is state.gov, but there's hundreds of companies that provide risk reports if you ask them for money. I hope that was helpful.
Maybe the one other thing I would just add to your list, they always said like, don't wear your company logo type stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because basically it's like putting a stamp on your forehead that says, especially if it's a big company. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and this is another thing, like around anywhere, I see people with this at conferences all the time. They'll wear their lanyards out and like into the evening. Right. What are you doing?
They're at the bar, right?
Yeah. Well, I represent this company. I'm the executive director of it. And I think about this, so we talk about this a lot, and I didn't put it in this talk for some reason, but it's long enough, really. But security by obscurity is a real important concept. If you are a risk, or if you have higher risk, not knowing, I have a beautiful lock that does this. I set this lock on the table, I give the person the key. Open the lock, they cannot open the lock. It's because there's a covering where the real keyhole is. If you don't know where the vulnerability is, or that somebody is a valuable or target, you're absolutely right. Like not wearing your company logos, for sure. Thank you. So first things first, during. How do you get out of this as unscathed as possible? Humanize yourself. Talk about your kids. Talk about your family. Talk about your job. Talk about your struggle. Talk about anything that makes you an identifiable human rather than a faceless person who's a tourist. Anything that makes you have a story and a backstory. Humanize yourself. There may not be a lot of opportunity to do that, but it has shown that in hostage situations, in kidnapping situations, it will increase by multiples the survival rate and the lack of harm. Okay. So give them the assets that they want. To them, this is a transaction. They are after money. They are after money. So that is what you will give them if you can. Be prepared for you to do it quickly. Most of the stuff under an hour. If you begin to freak out, which is honestly expected, it can lengthen it, because then instead of it happening real quick, get in, get out, get on your way, now they have to deal with a different threat, and that may lead to different actions being taken. So in order to stay calm, breathing technique is when you are breathing, because to remind yourself to stay calm, to meditate in those moments, to like think happy thought, it has to be something mechanical. So if you are under distress, you have to do something as simple as possible. Here is the simplest breathing technique you will ever hear in your entire life. Make your exhale longer than your inhale. If you make your exhales longer than your inhales, your body will calm down. It is a physiological trigger. It will calm you down. Use it in other spaces when you're not being here. It's great. So then afterward, get somewhere safe with people, preferably people you know. Get to police, file a report. Get to medical if needed, and recover. Remember to recover both physically and mentally. We see a lot of people who have been through arduous things not seek therapy afterwards. That is a mistake. Okay. So now, just a real quick note on biometrics. So story time. David the DJ. This just happened. I was in Seattle and I was talking to a DJ. His name's not David, but he also happens to be running a software security company and has a history with the law in Canada. So he was trying to get back into Canada to see someone and do some work. And in that process, he, the first time he went through, they very politely forced his thumb down on his biometric scanner, unlocked his phone, took it, and looked through it when he was going through customs. Canada. So to say that this stuff, if you make a bad name for yourself, if you act out, that it can't go wrong, it very well can. Now, he's about to go back into Canada. He said, this is what I'm going to do. Turning off my biometrics, backing up my phone into the cloud. I'm going with nothing. I will have an empty phone on me and my ID. That's it. I have nothing else. You know, so I'm only going there, I'm coming back. That's it. He gets in. Again, issues. No biometrics, no anything. He's walking through airport security. They ask him to open his phone. He has a type code. They cannot make him open his phone if you have a type code in Canada. Now, here's the interesting thing. I'll give that in a second. There's this as a mode of prevention on Apple. I think Samsung has a different one. I think all the other ones have some version of this. If they're large enough phones, they have a lockdown mode. Lockdown mode will not just shut off the biometrics. It will actually make it so that you have to do a full access verification to get back into your phone and your data. It will encrypt your phone so that even if they can somehow pull the data off of it, it's still useless. So, not that you have anything to hide. We are trying to de-incentivize people from taking your stuff, right?
Right.
We're trying to make it more expensive and more difficult for them to do that. So by putting your phone in lockdown mode just right before you're going through, as your plane is landing, you're going to go through security. Great, lockdown mode. Even if you can pull that a line, they can't get anything. Can't do anything. They can't see your travel plans. They can't. In a country like Canada, might not be that big of a deal for you. In other countries, it is a huge safety risk if they can see your travel plans. If you are an American citizen, that is bad. Or a lot of citizens. So key versus code law, how they were able to put his thumb on his device is he was being belligerent, and you can restrain a belligerent person if they are in custody. That means that you can force someone into a position if that position happens to be on his phone. And if that phone happens to unlock, it is a gray area in the law. Code means that you have to verifiably turn over that information. In the US, this works a little different. It is key. If you have the key to a locked room or a locked safe, and somebody, I think they subpoena your house, or they get a warrant thing for searching your house. That thing you have a key to is covered within that warrant. Whereas if you don't have a key and it's just a code or a combination, that is not covered in the same warrant. It has to be specifically covered as a line item in the warrant. So it's just a little difference in the line. So second two-factor at home with a trusted person, if you're traveling, very important. Backups of your documents. Back up your documents. Have things somewhere where you can have them, whether they're printed, somewhere that people can access them. You can call on phone home and get them. And then an emergency card with numbers and addresses. Yeah. Oh, dummy wallet. I was going to talk about pickpocket. So this is a pickpocket. I did a year of psychology in Spain, in Madrid. And when I was there, I really wanted to get pickpocketed. Really wanted to get pickpocketed. I wanted to meet a pickpocket. So I walked around with a wallet in my back pocket. I had this one. You've heard this. Oh, okay. I tell this on stage. So I'm walking around, and I guess I was moving with too much purpose because I didn't get pickpocketed at all. Other people in my group pickpocketed, other classmates pickpocketed, a bunch of other tourists pickpocketed, people I'm talking to, they got pickpocketed. About 10 people that I knew got pickpocketed in the time that I was there. It was pretty common in Madrid. Subways are pretty crowded there. So, and the law, it's like a misdemeanor or something. Like it's not a huge theft. So, the last week I'm there, I'm about to fly home. I'm like really upset that I haven't done this. I'm off school. I just have time to kill. I go out, I go to a store, I buy some khaki shorts, I buy a Hawaiian shirt. It's winter, by the way, it's like December. And I get a map and a camera, I bought like a broken camera. And I start riding the subway, walking around. And I feel my wallet's gone. And in the wallet I had some euros and a little note that said, "Hey, I really want to meet a pickpocket. I'm a musician. Here's my website. Check it out. This is me. Thanks. Here's my phone number. Can you?" My phone rang the next day. We met up for coffee. Spent 2 hours, he taught me how to steal glasses off of people's face, ties off of people's necks, belts off people's waists, wallets out of their pockets. And he told me about his choosing, his targeting, and he said, yeah, you were a big green neon go sign. So I was like, great, that's really cool. But if you carry a dummy wallet with just a couple of things on you that doesn't have your full receipts and IDs and things, that's probably a better idea. The less information that you can have on yourself while going through security and more traveling is better. Have the very minimum amount. And then again, do your research, know the law, know the language, know the area, and know the people. Okay, I'm gonna skip that slide because it's actually boring. Let's take a little jump into something fun. We have 10 more minutes, right? Yeah. Yeah, we can do this.
Yes, so what have we learnt from history? Because Craig, the PM, spoke at a summit yesterday about the importance of history. And we agree with him. Often it pays to cast your mind back to see what impact history has had on our society.
Yeah, that's right. And find out if you learnt the lessons from the past. For instance, I always love the story of the Trojan horse, you know, where the Greeks won the war against Troy.
Yeah, sure, in Turkey.
Yeah, in Turkey, exactly. The Greeks smuggled soldiers through the city gates inside a giant wooden horse. They came out and won the war.
A defining moment in warfare history.
Exactly. But would anyone be so stupid as to fall for it again? Would anybody let a Trojan horse through their gates today?
Anybody seen this before?
We're just letting you have a note. You pick up tomorrow morning again, are you? Yeah, pick up tomorrow morning. Right, left hand side.
Mate. Why? I was having to go and show this company.
Where's the history department? Quadrangle? Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
It's more interesting. It's in the Opera House.
Yeah, because we have
The Turkish consulate.
Can we leave here tonight? Nice Consul General, we just want to leave it here for the night, hello? No, we can't leave this here.
First time. But Army Headquarters Land Command.
Got this Trojan horse.
His bell's getting tired.
Can we leave it here for the night? It's not. What do you mean? I'm sure there's no one inside. Why would there be anyone inside? If we just leave it here at the barracks for the night? I had no idea he was in there.
The point is, so now we're going to talk about ransomware attack. Just a little bit. I mean, this is a big high level thing, but yeah. So before I'm going to keep just going through this because we really don't have time. We still have a little bit to go. So what you need beforehand is a comprehensive inventory of all systems and access controls. That means emergency contacts for each of the systems that you use. So if you are running a business that has multiple web services, you absolutely need to know chain of command for every single one of those services. You need to know contact, you need to know inventory, as well as the ways that each one of those is accessible and vulnerable. You need to just have this written down on a sheet. Here's why. So that you can form a continuity plan. What does that mean? When something happens, you need to be able to assess what's going on and then minimize the amount of time that you have down. Now, one of the best ways that you can do this is if you are performing backups. If you are not performing comprehensive backups of your systems, this is absolutely your biggest vulnerability, because it will not just take down your system once, it will take down your system forever. And to have not just a single backup system, but to have stacked backup systems, because a lot of these ransomware attacks, they are getting into your system, they are evaluating the systems, they are finding out how you are making your backups, then they are infecting your backups. So to be sure that your backups are insulated from one another as well is very important. So we'll talk a little bit about the backup system in a second. So access system continuity, assess system continuity during and execute your continuity plan. And you narrow down your failures. So if you have system continuity, if let's say this, okay, those are affected, sever the line so that there's no longer communication going between those, heal those, get them back up and running, reboot the backups, and then you keep on moving forward. So then you isolate your failure plans, execute your continuity plan. Just remember that. Contact a professional. If your web services are down, and I've experienced this in small ways. Eric's experienced this in small ways. A lot of business people have experienced this in small ways. So my website went down, it sucked. If I didn't have a good professional lined up ahead of time to make that call, I would have been down for weeks. I was up and running in 2 hours. So afterwards, assess the damage and loss, recover your backups. From the backups, engage an incident response firm. If you are a large company that is going to begin at 200 grand, it is going to end at the sky. But they actually know how to handle it. So backup. Loss is a threat. This is awesome stuff right here. So we had somebody come to us that had a crypto wallet in a safety deposit box. Been sitting there for 5 years. They wanted to access it. They were doing all the right things except for one. They didn't back it up. They didn't have a copy. So when they plugged that device in, that device was dead. Don't know why. Water damage, no nothing, it was isolated, didn't get stolen, it was just dead. Didn't have backup. Luckily, we were able to help that customer, but we didn't get a percentage of that because we just directed them to a different company. But backups save lives and careers. I had a photographer friend who had his entire computer lifted, completely stolen, as well as the backups and the drives that he kept religiously that were right next to it. So we recommend something called the 3-2-1 rule. 3-2-1 rule is absolutely important. You need 3 backups, 2 on-site, 1 off-site. Simple. But it prevents so much from happening because all you need to do is experience it once and you will never forget it. For businesses, this gets complicated. You need to bring on an engineer. Backups are really, really complex. They're difficult. They need to be stored in different systems. They need to be stored with different access levels. Bring on an engineer. Have a network architect build something for you. Have a backup person that's in charge of different systems for each level of it. It's a big company, probably not do that. Now we're going to talk about your guide to risk and threat analysis. This is the big thing that you need to do for your life. These are really, 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 really small things. So I'm going to go over everything. Okay. Oh, sorry about the kerning. So this is just an example. Over here, you do an inventory of every single thing that you have. So for right now, we have the money in your bank. If your home and the assets in your home, your personal email, your work email, your job, your intellectual property, your client database, your retail office, your vendor data center, web services, your company, your phone, your data services, your mobile phone. Then up here, you have the threat. Okay, so here, in-person robbery, fire, hacking, the internet goes down, just the internet going down. So in-person robbery into your home, risk 5, that this will happen at some point in your life. What is
Oh, so one thing to think about this, these are example numbers. It depends where you live and that changes your number. We use like a 1 to 10. Again, this is like the 101, but this helps you, reduce overhead by really understanding once you think through it, like the impact of a home invasion 7, well, it depends. It can be higher for some people. So what I think Nick brought some paper and everyone should be doing a grid right now and filling it in themselves.
I didn't, and we don't have time.
No. Okay. All right. But anyway, these are examples. You fill in your numbers from like 1 to no risk, 10 to catastrophic risk or
So
impact?
we have risk and impact here. So for instance, hacking on a home, 0, 0. You can't hack a home. And you can hack the documents that control them, but you can't hack the home itself. So don't, this is however the system is usable so that it is valuable to you.
Alexa, open the front door.
Right.
Yeah, and if you have Alexa, but if I don't have Alexa at my
I
house,
don't
so I
have
don't,
a front door that opens like that. So.
so you might have a higher threat and risk.
Right. So, but here, like hacking onto vendor data center, risk is 8. The impact would be 10, catastrophic. So, let's see if we can just find one more example. So vendor data center, in-person robbery of a vendor data center, risk is 1, impact is 2. That's actually probably higher, as Eric can attest to. Physical attacks on data centers are actually going up. They are intense and they are really, really hard to protect against. So let's move on. So the big bad takeaway slide. If you take a photo of this, that is pretty much everything you need to walk away with this talk about. Digital, get a password manager, have 2 two-factor authentication tokens, separate email for your finances and vitals. Be sure to use the 3-2-1 backup rule. Done. Physical, have copies of your vital data stored in a data rated safe with offsite backups. Get a go back. Carry only on you what you can lose and get an emergency card. Behavioral, situational awareness, put your phone in your pocket. Move with purpose. Do the work in evaluating threats and risk, then make the plan, then relax. Or as it's written, relax. Because at this point, you should be able to zen out. So I bring you to the Zen and the art of security. This is, I think, the last slide. So if you want to hang out for a second, you can enjoy it. You have to go, I understand. Martial arts and hand-to-hand combat masters exist. Who believes that this is a true statement? They actually exist. Yes? Yeah. It is true. It's absolutely true. Now, if that martial arts master decided to beat you up on the street, there's pretty much nothing you can do about it, right? They couldn't do anything about it. I'm martial arts master. But it would beg the question, why? Why? So if you are a target in reality versus in your mind, that's an important difference to know. So I approach security with this philosophy. When you are running, when you and a friend are running from a cheetah, you don't need to run faster than the cheetah. You just need to run faster than your friend. An ounce of protection goes a really long way. A really long way. If you make yourself a difficult target versus an impossible target, it often has the same impact. So make yourself a difficult target. Because bad actors usually target the lowest common denominator. I say, to really cover your ass, make yourself a prime number. Do something different than the lowest common denominator, and you will be more safe, have a higher level of security than those around you. And if you are trying to get other people on board with this, if you are trying to have people take your personal security, your business security, your financial security, your physical well-being, just security in general, seriously, if you want to make a plan for your family, your friends to have these things, actually follow through where you're saying, yes, let's get on board. Let's make an escape plan. Let's make a rally point. Let's get go bags together, every single person. The best way to get people excited about a fire plan is to burn down the building across the street. That's from Jason East Street. I don't recommend actually burning down the building across the street, but showing people that fires do happen works really, really well. So show them articles of this actually taking place, look it up, but again, don't take this out of proportion. Relax about it. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Have a plan, execute the plan, then recover. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, Sarah, that was great. So, we have multiple videos going here. We're gonna at least get the
Yeah,
audio.
I'll get that one too.
And slides, are you?
Yeah, I'll give you some.
There we go.
Yes,
The
it's
question
nice.
is plugging water and we'll
Give
get
you
everything.
everything. Yeah.
Thanks.
for
Thanks.
coming.
Thanks for coming, everybody. This is great evening,
Thanks, Eric.
great fun. Thanks, Eric.
Everyone, I'm gonna point the camera towards everybody so you can actually see.
Ah. Hey, we got people keeping around.
All right,
Okay.
we're gonna hang up on you and we'll talk later.
No. All right. Have a good day. Talk soon.
Yeah.
See you in like I guess 30 minutes or so.
Something like that.